This is a major development project workshop. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce everybody on this. One by one, they're going to give a little presentation about what they're up to right now in terms of major development. And then we're going to talk about what they do, the obstacles they face in doing it, and that kind of stuff. And then we'll open up the questions and we'll find out a whole bunch of stuff. And hopefully everybody leaves a little bit smarter.
Yeah, I mean, we always.
Down at the end, we have Dave Walkoff from Harlem Town Square. You know, that project in Brentwood that Dave talked about. We have Steve Krieger from Angel Burton. They're involved in all implementations of Bristol. I can see you here. You can't hear me?
Here, want this mic? Can you hear me now? Just checking.
Okay. Dave Walkoff from Harlem Town Square. We have Steve Krieger from Angel Berman. We have Nick Halstead from Mill Creek, very fine residential builder. We have Sean McLean from Renaissance Downtowns. That's what happens when I don't read my notes. And we have Chris Kelly from Tritech. They're involved in a whole bunch of big projects on the island right now. So we're going to start it off with Dave. No, you're not ready? Hold on. Somebody else is plugged in. Who's plugged in? Who's plugged in? So then we will start with him? Okay, I'm just going to do my Phil Donahue now.
Definitely want to be like.
You want to start? Okay, we're going to start with Steve Krieger from Engel Berman. Here you go.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me well? Yes? Okay, good. All right, so I'm Steve Krieger. I'm one of the partners of a development company called Engel Berman. You might know one of our businesses is we own the Bristol Assisted Living chain. We currently own, operate, have built and developed 15 existing Bristols. We right now have on Long Island and between Manhattan, Long Island, and New Jersey, 5 Bristols under construction. You might see a building coming out of the ground on the Meadowbrook Parkway, right across from Bloomingdale's Nordstrom's. There's a 6-story building over there coming out of the ground. That's ours. That's going to be a Bristol. We have a Bristol coming out of the ground on Jericho Turnpike in Route 106 and 107. We bought 18 acres from the Doremus family over there. We have 265-unit, 2-building Bristol and a Bristol Light coming out of the ground over there. But I guess today I was asked to talk about a very exciting project that we have. We answered an RFP, which was put out by the town of Hempstead 2 years ago. Probably a little less than 2 years ago. It was an RFP for a parcel in Baldwin on the corner of Grand Avenue and Merrick Road. We won that RFP from the town of Hempstead, and we're in the process now of going through a very arduous and strenuous and expensive process of assembling land, and we probably have about 15 different landowners. The county and the town being 2 of those landowners, they're being very cooperative. And we're in the middle of a condemnation, which means that any of the landowners that won't sell to us as a result of the property being a blighted land, pursuant to state law, they can condemn this property. So we're in the process of developing a mixed-use development, which would be one of the first done like this in the town of Hempstead and Nassau County. It'll be a combination of retail, and we have a lease out right now with LA Fitness, so that's a 35,000 square foot lease. In addition to that, it'll be dorm rooms. We have a collaboration right now that we're finishing up with Malloy College for them to take some dorm rooms because Malloy College is pretty close. And then in addition to that, we're going to have some multifamily rentals. The property is less than a mile from the train station, which is right by Sunrise Highway, so we're on Merrick Road. And it's very exciting. We're looking forward to it, and hopefully in the next year and a half, you'll see us coming out of the ground. We have to go for a rezoning for the town of Hempstead Town Board, and prior to that happening, the properties have to be condemned, or we have to purchase all of those properties from those different property owners. So that's one project that we're doing on Long Island that we think is of significance. The town of Hempstead has been working on this. We actually answered an RFP in 2008. There was an RFP prior to 2008, so they've been trying since probably 2005, 2006 to redevelop this whole corner on Merrick Road and Grand Avenue. Something else that we're doing on Long Island, which is of significance, and we think it's of regional significance, is we are in the process of getting our site plan approval, and we have a zoning, and we have all of our architectural plans are done, all of our site work, all of our engineering, our civil engineering is completed. We're going to be opening up a drug rehabilitation, research, and treatment facility at exit 69 in Calverton. And I don't know if you're familiar with Calverton. About 19 years ago, my partner Jan Berman and his family bought 500 acres from Grumman in the town of Riverhead. It was a Grumman property, and Riverhead was given the property, and then Jan bought the property from Riverhead, and he's developed everything on that property except for 100 acres. And we're going to be taking 39 acres of that 100 acres in conjunction and actually in partnership with Northwell Health. Northwell is going to be our partner, and we're going to be doing research with evidence-based research for drug and alcohol rehabilitation and treatment. It's one of the first of its kind in the country, where you have a major hospital system collaborating with private enterprise to find a cure for drug addiction and alcohol addiction. We're going to be working with Big Pharma to find different drugs that we can use to, besides Suboxone and some of the other things that are available right now, to try to help this big epidemic that we have right now. Because I'm sure everybody, including myself, everybody in this room has a friend or a relative who, over the years, has had a problem with either alcohol or substance abuse. So it's a national epidemic. It's a Nassau County epidemic. It's even a bigger Suffolk County epidemic. And so those are two regional, two projects of significance that we think will be helpful to the residents of Long Island. Thank you.
You guys can hear this about the microphone too. Oh, I know.
Good afternoon. Nick Halstead from Mill Creek Residential. Mill Creek is for those of you who aren't familiar, we're a national multifamily rental developer, and we are operating in 14 different markets nationwide, and the Northeast is one of those regions. We're very active on Long Island. Over the last 5 to 6 years, we've developed in excess of 800 units across 5 different communities. Some of the ones you might be familiar with are Odera, Mineola, on the corner of Old Country Road and Willis Avenue in Mineola. We've also previously developed West 130 and Metro 303 in West Hempstead and Hempstead, respectively. I'm here today to talk to you about our most recent project on Searing Avenue in downtown Mineola. We are currently under construction on this particular asset. Got a couple of low-tech diagrams. I'm happy to. Happy to talk offline if somebody wants to take a more detailed view here. But basically what you're seeing is a street level view of a 2-building, 192-unit development complex. It will be a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. The studios roughly are 10% of the building. one bedrooms and two bedrooms are 45% each. The one bedrooms have substantial den and loft layouts, so there's additional flexibility depending on what our renters choose. So we kind of pride ourselves in creating a lot of different layouts that work for our renters by choice. You know, our architects are here in the room and can, you know, happy to stick around after and kind of talk about some of the more design details. But we really want these two buildings to function cohesively. There's, you know, amenities in both properties that each, you know, depending on what building you live in, you can access both. There are, you know, comprehensive state-of-the-art fitness centers, business centers, package delivery systems. The south building will have a pool courtyard. The north building will have more of a landscaped outdoor kitchen courtyard. And actually, I'll go to the next. Just kind of an aerial overview of the community to give you a sense of the scale. Some of the interesting things we had to do here in terms of getting approvals from the Village of Mineola. The south building faces the local municipal Little League ball field, so we agreed to taper the density down to 3 stories of residential on that side. Taking advantage of that density, we decided to put a rooftop deck amenity, so it was a kind of a nice win-win for the community as well as our particular development project. Also creates a little more sunlight in the pool courtyard on the south building, so all very cognizant of, you know, the requirements of the local municipalities as well as opportunities for us to enhance our design. There's substantial structured parking for both buildings. So what else can I kind of focus on here? Yeah, I think that's kind of the basic overview. We are under, like I said, we're under construction. There's excavations that happen on both development sites. The south side of the building actually had significantly less demolition, so it's a little bit ahead of the north building. We are going to be in construction all of 2018, and first deliveries on the south building roughly April 2019, with the north building to follow roughly May, June of 2019.
All right, let's go to Chris then. Chris, you're in the computer too? Oh, jeez. All right. Well, look, Dave, you know, you waited 15 years to get approvals on this project. We could probably, yeah, what's another 5 minutes, exactly. There you go. Any questions so far on my tie? Nope. I don't reveal my sauces. But no, because it says Rob, and Rob couldn't make it, so it's Chris.
I was going for that, but I couldn't find a big enough Sharpie.
You know, this is going to be a high-tech presentation. Yeah, sure. Steve, question.
Can you talk a little more about that? It's a pretty impressive, big-time story you're telling there.
What kind of low-budget thing is this?
So we're in the approval process. We've been going for our site plan. Architectural plans have been finished. Hired BBS to do our architectural. We just thought that there was a huge need for this. We're a private pay model. We'll take insurance. But we did a collaboration with Northwell. Northwell has a world-renowned scientist, doctor on their staff who's going to be leading the research for us. Because the thing about alcohol and drug abuse patients is that if you try to get them into a research protocol and they're not living on campus, you can never get them to come when they're supposed to come for the protocol. So if you have a situation where you have them living on campus, then you can actually do research, and we're going to do evidence-based research with psychiatrists, because there's typically more than one reason why someone becomes an addict. There's psychological issues, there's addiction issues, there's physical issues, there's chemical issues. So there's lots of different reasons, and we're going to try to do the research to try to figure that out. So to give you a little bit more information, we have 20 detox beds, which will be supervised by medical doctors with Northwell. We have 40 patient beds, and that's a 30-day stay. Detox is anywhere from probably from a 3 to 7 day stay. So we have that's 20 beds. We have 40 beds for treatment, and then in addition to that, we have 20 beds for an extended stay. And the whole thing about, if anyone knows anything about addiction, the whole thing about addiction is the continuity of care, right? Because you just can't get, you can't just stay for 30 days and then all of a sudden say, I'm cured, not an addict anymore, right? You need ongoing meetings. You have to go to NA, you have to go to AA meetings. You have to do all these things and follow the right steps. And we all know about, alcoholism in 12 steps in the big book, but we're going to do a lot more than that. And one of the things we're also going to be doing is we're going to be getting into the telehealth business, which means that if you're an addict and you need to speak to someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can speak to someone by picking up your phone and speak to your coach or your sponsor and have that continuity of care. It's not your sponsor, it'll be someone else to take care of you.
It's awesome, Steve, really is. And before we go to Sean, just want to give a quick plug. This week, so today's cover story in Long Island Business News is all about New York State's medical cannabis program and how it's woefully inadequate, and how it also could be a big answer to the opioid problem, as a substitute, and how some big pharma people are lobbying against it because they don't want to lose money. But read that article, it's a front page story.
Thank you very much. My name is Sean McLean. I'm a senior partner at Renaissance Downtowns. Quick question, how many people in the room have heard of the Riverside Revitalization Project in Southampton? Less than half, which is what I thought. So I have, rather than doing a 10-minute presentation in an hour, I'm going to do an hour-long presentation in 10 minutes and throw a lot at you, but try and run through this quickly, so bear with me. But I assume that a lot of you had not heard of this project. We are in the town of Southampton. On the north side, the town has been working on revitalizing this area for a long time with all the same smart growth principles that you hear throughout every one of the summits that Vision Long Island holds, and what a lot of people are promoting on Long Island, and a lot of my colleagues here up on the dais have been building. The area in question has significant land use challenges, or had, in the underlying zoning and environmental conditions. So we had to go through all of those, including Pine Barrens, DEC, Peconic Estuary, as well as state and county DOTs, in order to get this approved. After understanding all of those conditions, we took a look at this area here, and this is the Riverhead downtown, the Main Street area where the aquarium is over here, the Peconic River running through it. The south side of that is the town of Southampton, and so Southampton zoning is what regulates that area, and so does the town of Southampton Town Board. Riverside, this hamlet in Southampton, is the poorest hamlet in all of Long Island, with a $34,000 median income and a $74,000 median home value. It blows away other communities that we think of as disadvantaged within Long Island by its the nature of the poverty there. And significant heroin addiction, which is something we work with the community every day. So it's great to hear that the project's going forward in Calverton. It's a huge achievement. I wish you guys the best with that, and more of it on Long Island. So we went through the process of forming a public-private partnership with the town of Southampton, and then created what we always do is a revitalization action plan, which recommends to the municipality actions they should take to revitalize their area. We therefore, in return, get contract rights to buy all municipal property in the development area that we're talking about. We use our public-private partnership to reach out to the community, the stakeholders, and on-the-ground crowdsource placemaking to open a local office and engage the community in a way that's extremely meaningful and gives them ownership in the development and the process that moves forward. We do door knocking, community meetings. This is an ongoing process over years, even after the project gets underway and under construction and gets approvals. We do a lot of environmental equity and a lot of social equity investments. We have an online presence called Riverside Rediscovered, and this complements our in-person meetings, community asset mapping, community development. And this results in getting ideas from the community as to what it is that they want within their community, what's missing. We found that a lot of early education was missing in this poorer end of the east end of Long Island, the furthest west as you're going to get. So we went to the Children's Museum of the East End in Bridgehampton, and after sponsoring 11 8-week sessions at our offices, we came up with $600,000 between the state and the municipality to build a brand new children's museum and early education center within the development district inside of Riverside. So it was a huge achievement, and we have a lot of partners that have come to the table on this. Huge proponents of environmental responsibility. There's an 850,000 gallon a day treatment plant that will be built as part of this project. We'll be using the treated effluent to actually irrigate and build 30 acres of brand new wetlands along the Peconic River estuary, which is a tremendous environmental achievement. While we also pick up over 150,000 gallons a day of existing septic that's in a 3 to 1 year contributory to the Peconic estuary. So the net benefit to the estuary and nitrogen and phosphorus loading is going to be substantial even after all of the development is done. We spent a lot of time with the community on architecture, which resulted in a form-based code, which regulates how the buildings will look and the form that they take in the public realm against the street side. So we regulate the size of the sidewalks, access to parking, where the parking goes, what the buildings look like, and how they function. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So the form-based code is dictated by proximity to the traffic circle at the Riverhead downtown. The further you get away from the traffic circle, the less dense the area. This area is around 300 acres. We increased the densities to 4.5 stories on the largest areas. And I'll just keep going. So at the end of the day, working with the community and working with the environmentalists and working with the elected officials, we entitled a little over 3.1 million square feet to be developed. It is currently, as of right, the zoning is done, the seeker is done. The only thing that is holding up development at this moment is the building of the treatment plant itself. We're going through that process with the town, the county, and the state in order to do the map and bounds of a brand new sewer district. And it's anticipated that we will own and operate the sewer treatment plant privately in order to not need to rely on public funding to build the treatment plant itself. We all know how difficult it is to produce sewer treatment plants and the infrastructure needed for these larger developments. In addition to this, we only control about 30% of the developable area that has been entitled. So there are 5 other developers that have put in plans for preliminary site plan approval alongside of us. And that's one of the trademarks of Renaissance, is that our developments are really open for the world to invest alongside of us. We entitle other people's property for their use, planning, and business decisions that they can make at any point in time. The zoning was passed on the motion of the town, not us as applicants, and therefore that zoning is part of the legislation in the town and open for anybody to use within the district. So it's exciting to see other people develop alongside of us. The mixed-use nature of that zoning allows for any use within the building, any use within any property in the area. There are no hard and fast site plans. It is designed to change with the times, change with the markets. If markets switch to medical, if markets switch to office, if markets switch to multifamily or hotel, those uses can replace other uses that are previously contemplated. With this, I'll move on. I know this is a lot, and sorry about the technical difficulties here. Thank you.
Not yet? Go to Chris then.
One other important fact, of the 3 million square feet, 2,200 residential units were approved as of right. We put in the code ourselves, 50% one-for-one workforce housing, matching any non-regulated housing as part of the deal. It was the last real opportunity to be responsible to the east end of Long Island and provide priority to town employees, school district employees, volunteer firemen and women, EMS workers, etc. So we're very, very proud of that and excited to move forward with it. Thank you.
Great, Sean. And for those who don't know, Renaissance is also doing similar things in the village of Hempstead and also in Huntington Station. So they're helping to revitalize those two areas with a similar type of planning, and they really are doing a great job. And while we figure out who's next, oh, looks like you're almost ready, Chris. Okay, I guess. Oh, write your questions down. Oh. I was at the groundbreaking this last week. Great project. Our offices are just down the road from it, in case you want to visit the newspaper. Okay, while we try a different laptop, we're going to open it up to a quick question.
So, Sean, just two quick questions for Sean on, first of all, the sewers. What's going to be the capacity and what kind of sewering are you using there? And then real quick, just you said it was 50% workforce housing. How do you create a sewer plant and be profitable at 50% workforce?
The capacity of the plant will eventually be around 850,000 gallons
Per day.
per day. Yes. It's a large municipal size plant, a substantial amount of residential. Plus, we are picking up approximately 700 homes that are currently on septic right within the watershed to the Peconic Estuary. So it's very important to the town that the net benefit is that the area is better off environmentally once the 3 million square feet is built than it is today, which is an interesting way to move about this. The workforce housing is agnostic to the cost of infrastructure. Right? The cost to a building and the cost of using low-income housing tax credits and other subsidies that help build that type of housing with rent control allows us to build what needs to be built under infrastructure. The more difficult piece is getting the for-profit or the non-regulated residential and office uses to be able to pay the ongoing annual fees for the use of the treatment plant, because we will not be charging any of the local residents that we're tying in for at least 20 years. There will be no cost to the existing flow. Right? So we're working on the subsidy to do that. And the things that we're looking at to do so are very the new versions of green bonds and taxable and tax-free bond issues.
Yeah, we'll talk about financing, once we get through all the presentations. Chris, from Triton.
All right. Hopefully we got all our IT issues worked out. I'm going to stand here so I can click. The project I'm talking to you about is the Ronkonkoma Hub. It's a multimodal transportation hub with the MacArthur Airport on the lower south side. Our project is on the north side of the Ronkonkoma train station, and it's about 2 blocks from the LIE. So it's convergence of road, rail, and air. We kind of focused our project around the station itself. And if you've been to Ronkonkoma train station, it's not a grand station like Penn Station or any of those places, but it is one of the busiest train stations on Long Island with 17,000 people going in and out of it every day. We looked at it as sort of the gateway to Long Island. You can find signs in Manhattan and in Queens that say, you know, Ronkonkoma. And we saw it as sort of a portal into everything that we have to offer as an island. But when you drive through the neighborhood, it's not really the front door that you necessarily want to have. We wanted to create an 18-hour place-based development with restaurants and entertainment and you know, jobs and a full community. We looked at a lot of the things that Long Island had to offer, where when we first started the project, Michigan was running an ad campaign called Pure Michigan, right? And you looked at it, and they had snowmobiles and some cool stuff, but it wasn't. It paled in comparison to what we have to offer right here with the beaches that we have to offer, the wine region we have to offer. We have, I think, 5 of the nation's top 25 golf courses. All of these things make Long Island great, but Long Island hasn't been that great at marketing itself. And we thought that what we did here would be a great way to showcase all of what Long Island has to offer. This is the project itself. So you have the existing parking garage. It sort of runs right down the middle of the project. Phase 1 is all the way to the right side of the screen. This is the existing station right here. I have to walk a long way. All right. So this is phase 1, and the following phase is sort of what the schedule for those things are going to be. 2017, we did our groundbreaking, I think, last week. For the 489 residential homes that are under construction right now. Phase 2, we're hoping to get started next year, and the subsequent phases, and similar to what Sean had talked about, that form-based, you know, we have some flexibility there with some of those other phases as well. This is the master plan, 1,450 homes, 180,000 square feet of retail, 350,000 square feet of office, and 60,000 square feet of, it says hospitality, but it's kind of community/hospitality space. This is phase 1, this is what we're starting on right now. 6 buildings, which should be about a 24-month construction schedule. If you look at, these are the views that you can see. You know, it's really confusing with all those black arrows and stuff like that, but this is sort of what all the street views are going to look like. And sort of how the rest of the development lays out in terms of phases. This is the site plan for phase 1. Let's continue on. This is phase 2. This is sort of more of the downtown portion of the project. So that's the existing parking garage around Ronkonkoma train station on the right side of the screen. We've placed all of the residential on the outside of the development, so you have more of the commercial right off of the train station, where you kind of, the heights change further into the downtown. You get smaller heights in the residential areas. Renderings of phase 2 buildings. Phase 3. Final phase, and here's some of the renderings of the project. These are all phase 1. Just so you can get a sense of, you know, sort of the residential, the scale of it. That's essentially it.
Okay, before Dave plugs in, thank you, Chris. You know, we were talking about a few things which we will talk about a little later once David gets started. But there's a couple of obstacles here. Not the least is financing, but when you're talking about residential and you're talking about multifamily apartments, the panel will agree that that's the easiest thing to get financing for these days because it leases up so quickly. The demand on Long Island is so great for it that banks are tripping over themselves to lend money to those kind of projects. Nick's shaking his head, so that's true. But the other thing we want to discuss, which Steve initially brought up and has something to do with Chris's project, is acquiring the necessary properties to make a big development possible. And that's one of the things that's held up that Baldwin project for years and years, more than a decade, because you have some stubborn landowners that think their stuff is worth whatever. The same thing happened with the Tritech project, and there's still people that are holding out and don't want to buy in, even though you're offering fair market value for the pieces. Yep. You want to address that, Steve?
So we had appraisals done on all the properties in the area, and actually the town hired an independent appraiser to appraise all the properties in Baldwin. So we're willing to pay up. There was a high value on the appraisal and a low value on the appraisal, and I'm negotiating against myself right now, but we're willing to pay the high value on every one of those appraisals to get these deals done. If we don't pay that, if the property owner won't take the high value on the appraisal on all these deals, then what we have to do is to say to the town, we can't make a deal with this seller, and the town has the right under state municipal law to condemn, because this has been it's a blighted area, it's designated as a blighted area, so then the town has the right to condemn those properties and take those properties, which the town would then transfer. The town IDA would do that. They'd transfer those properties to us for the due consideration.
It is difficult. And go ahead.
Difficult because if you make a deal with Harry to buy his property, right? You don't know, you don't know exactly when the condemnation is going to take place, right? So you have to have a seller that's willing to say, hey, I'm going to close in 2 years, 3 years, whatever the time frame is, and you really have a subject to contract. So that seller really is, the seller, is in a little bit of a tough situation, right? Because, he doesn't know exactly when you're going to close. I need the time to close. I can't close on Harry's property if I'm not getting the rest of the property, because what would be the purpose of that, right? I don't want to own just one building out of 15 buildings in Baldwin and be stuck with it, right? The purpose of us winning the RFP was to do the whole development. So it becomes sort of like a chess game.
And you never want to be first. You never want to be the first guy that sells. That's what they say in these things. But what Tritech did in their contract with Brookhaven was say once they assemble 25% of the properties and the other people hold out, hey, too bad, they're going to go to eminent domain, and they're going to get what the fair market value was initially. So they could have got more money, but they held out. So, all right, Dave.
Okay, the speakers don't connect to this computer, so I'm going to see if I can hear you this way. Just saying hello. Yeah. And it's telling you that we've been involved in building on Long Island for over 40 years. And we thought that after we bought Pilgrim State Hospital, that what was needed on Long Island was a smart growth community. And this was 15 years ago. We've been trying to get this passed for 15 years. The reason why we believe it works is that we're ideally located in the center of Long Island. It just happens that our company's named Heartland, so it really worked out quite gratuitously. We're right off the Long Island Expressway, or between the Long Island Expressway, the Southern Expressway, and off the Sac Coast Parkway. What we're trying to do here is, as you've heard today, and for this several years, and last 20 years, I guess now, we're trying to build a live, work, and play community. We have a tremendous amount of resources around us. We have the Suffolk Community College, we have the Edgewood Preserve, which we will be connected to. And as we go through this, you'll see that this is, by the way, we just got our first phase passed after 15 years. And what you're looking at is the first phase. Overall, we have 9,000 housing units, 3 million square feet of office, 1 million square feet of retail. We plan to have electric buses run through the community to the Deer Park train station, which will bring our residents to and from the train station, to be coordinated with the train schedule of the LIRR. We also have a tremendous amount of bike paths. We're gearing the development to two segments of the population, the empty nester and the millennials. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to, if you are outside of those two segments, that will stop you from coming into the community, but that's what the community is really geared for. Again, it's a live, work, and play environment. Here you have some both B-roll, and you'll see a fly-through. Most of this architecture will be similar to what we have, not all going to be the same. Again, it's going to be over the 3 phases. We're going to grow, by the way, this is the Park Avenue, you're looking at the Park Avenue street here. The trees, there's a tree-lined street right now that exists within, so we're trying to revitalize and keep the greenery that's already in place. It's magnificent trees on this property. This is beautiful trees and tree lines that will keep. We also have some pocket parks for those empty nesters who have grandchildren and want to have their grandchildren come and play. There'll be pocket parks sprinkled throughout the 450-acre community. We have townhouses. We have buildings that are going to be anywhere between 4-story and 8 stories. We also have 300, well, right now we have planned a 300,000 square foot office building in the first phase. Overall, there's 3 million square feet of office. We believe that with all of our smart growth communities that we are planning, that we hope to have more and more bigger mid-sized companies staying here on Long Island. I mean, that's really what we're trying to drive. Keeping millennials here, keeping young people here, whatever the next generation, I think it's the next generation, is Generation Z. So keep them here on Long Island. And I believe that and with the education that we have here on Long Island, that we'll be able to keep them. But what we need is a shot in the arm through all of our developments. Currently, just proselytizing. So anyway, this is the water tower place, which exists right now. We built a beautiful water tower on the hospital property, and that'll be the center of the first phase. And all these avenues and streets, also using a form-based code, have different sizes and widths to push people and pull people through all the different nodes of the Heartland Town Square. This is driving up one of the streets and looking at the water tower place. We plan a 24-hour community where you can go to restaurants and bars and all the other exciting things that a urban neighborhood has. That's what's being demanded by our millennials. They go on and they want a walking and biking community. So we have a movie theater. And we just believe that this is what's needed here on Long Island. We have the opportunity. We're looking forward, hopefully very soon, to breaking ground on the first phase. And we're very excited to get going. It's been a long time, a long haul. Like I told you, when we first started, I could see, and now I can't see it. So, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Hi. So the big question is, Dave, it's a very ambitious project. And once Amazon moves to Heartland, they're taking 8 million square feet. So are you going to have room to build what you want to build once Amazon picks Heartland?
Oh, yeah. We'll make room for everything. I think if we get Amazon, I'm assuming ISO will allow us to even have more density.
And your dad always points out to me when I speak to him, he goes, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to be probably at least a 30-year build-out in total. And even the first phase itself will probably take at least 10 years. So will you get started next year, as soon as next year, do you think?
We believe, yeah, well, we have to get through a couple of minor hurdles. But overall, yeah, we start the planning over the next year. and hopefully break ground within 2 years. So yeah, we're really looking. There's a lot of engineering and other things that go along with building a project such as this. And yeah, look, we have natural things that we can't go over. I can't build this all in 1 year. Nor do I don't think any. Certainly, we're not allowed to build it all. We're in phases. So, but it's just the largest development in Long Island. I think ever built and sold was 300 units. So if you use that math, it's going to take about 30 years to build this property. And you got to remember, as we're building this and renting it, 10% is for sale, 90% is rental. As people are going to leave, they are going to start families, and they're going to want to live the single-family home. And then we've got to re-rent the places that they live. So it's a constant motion. So as we're building, we've got to keep in mind our own economics, and economics double edged. He's sneezing on the truth. So we've got to keep that in mind.
All right, so we were going to talk about financing. We talked about it briefly. Has anybody had a problem with financing their projects? No. No. You'll see. That's still to come. Yes, thank you.
Just say one thing. If you notice, a lot of like the medium-sized, developers on Long Island, they do have a problem, right? So the largest developers that, have, long-term, banking relationships and have, private equity and a lot of equity to put into these deals, there's not a problem. But, you can't go to a bank. When I first went into this business, which was 30 years ago, you could go to a bank, and if you had a $5 million project, you could borrow $5 million, right? But if you have a $5 million project today, you could borrow $3 million or $2.5 million, right? So, over the last 20 years, things have, have changed a lot. So.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly add on to that. I mean, so if you're doing a 250 to 300 unit multifamily project and your capitalization's, say, $100 million, just to use round numbers, you're coming out of pocket $40 million of equity, and you need a stable of outside private equity investors to really make that happen. And we don't really even approach our investment capital partners until we have a deal under contract, set approvals, or at least a pathway to approvals, an understanding of what an IDA pilot might look like. We're really teeing up a fully baked out package and fully baked development project before we really reach out to our capital. But once we have that, the demand is there on Long Island, and we have no problem, getting the financing once there's a tangible project in play.
Our problems in financing have come from the fact that we are on the riskiest side of real estate development. So we're the first ones in, we have nothing, we have no security, we have nothing we can build, and we have a very long road to very large development and entitlement package. So traditional private equity has not, since 2008, gone into the land entitlement business. The public companies don't want to be in the land entitlement business. So we had to search outside of that. And because we are in an impact-based firm, we've started to take substantial amounts of private equity from impact-based investment funds. These are funds that are between $2 and $8 billion a piece that have traditionally invested in cures for infectious diarrhea and new LED light bulbs and solar power storage. But now that they're seeing that you can cause larger amounts of social and environmental impact through large-scale, correctly planned, inclusive real estate development, they've started to move into the development world. So it's a good shift in the kind of the world outlook that has helped us out a lot in taking on these large, risky projects.
Is Urban America still involved in Hempstead Village?
Yes.
Okay, that's one of those funders.
Yes. Yeah, they are still a partner in the overall development.
Great. Another thing I wanted to bring up before we open it up to questions and the broader audience. Major developments here on Long Island, and even not so major developments on Long Island, have had a lot of pushback and a lot of obstacles from community opposition. And one of the things that they're trying to change, I know there was a resolution in the State Assembly this past year that people who file an Article 78, does everybody know what an Article 78 is? Article 78 is challenging a zoning decision, usually from a municipality on a project. And projects can be held up, 12 months, 20 months. I think, Steve, you have some some experience with that, with having projects held up because of Article 78. I know that David now has a new lawsuit that was just filed by the Brentwood School Board, School District, which is holding up his project at the present time. So the resolution in the Assembly, and anybody can file an Article 78. You don't have to have any skin in the game. So you could hold up a $100 million or a $5 billion project by just a filing. So meanwhile, the developers who've invested millions and millions of dollars to get to the point where they are, just have to carry those properties and keep paying that money and keep paying the property taxes. I think your dad told me that he's paid $11 million, David, $11 million to the Brentwood School District without even building anything there over the last few years. And they're the ones suing. So they've gotten $11 million for no kids, no extra kids, no nothing, and they got $11 million just because they bought the land at Pilgrim State. So what this resolution would say, and I'm not sure if it's still in committee or if it's still going to come back this year, but it would say if you file an Article 78 at the judge's discretion, the judge could say, sure, you could file an Article 78, put up a bond. Because that puts skin in the game. And that way, if you want to challenge something, sure, go ahead. Where's the money? Anybody want to comment on that? I know it's a hot topic. Sure. Comment on that resolution that they're doing?
I think it's great because it makes sure that people that are filing the Article 78 have some skin in the game. All they're trying to do is hold up, NIMBYism and hold up development. And now that there's going to be a requirement to post a bond if it gets passed, they're going to have some skin in the game. If they lose, they're going to have skin. So that's very important from a development standpoint.
And it's not going to be mandatory. It's the judge's discretion. So it's
Right,
a
but I mean-
case-by-case basis. It's not going to be, you have to put money.
Right? It's a big obstacle.
We were sued 7 times. We were sued 7 times before we did New Village in Patchogue, which held us up a considerable amount of time. And we were sued mostly by retailers who had been in the village a long time, were concerned about impacts on parking. And when you look at, they're the biggest beneficiaries of what we've done there and how popular the village is at this time now.
And I should also add, it's not just the developers that suffer when their projects are held up. It's the entire community that suffers because you're losing the jobs, you're losing all the tax revenues. So the entire community, you're losing the people that can shop in the downtowns. You're losing all of that stuff, and it could be delayed for as much as 20 months, 25 months, and there's really no limit to it. So it's something that really does need to be addressed. Any questions so far for our illustrious panel?
Well, just real quick, I thought it was interesting. Can you all speak a little bit about the 2006 Kelo versus New London eminent domain case that does allow for municipalities to take properties for private developers? And have you seen that work, and do you foresee it working more as we go forward?
Who wants to take that? What? Go ahead, Sean. You're elected.
I think it's a hard choice when a developer's working with a municipality to use eminent domain. Often it has been very successful where it's been righteous. And for projects like in Patchogue, where I'm not sure it was used, but it was the mayor had conversations about using it. He threatened it in order to get people to be reasonable. And I think Baldwin has, I'm not familiar on the ground, but has had this history of, I grew up in Lynbrook, so even when I was growing up, there was talk about redeveloping this area of Baldwin. Where it can be righteous and where the project is seen to be a true benefit to the community, I think it can be used. From our perspective, we don't use it because our projects are large enough to allow us to be flexible and go around people who don't want to work within that context. But our projects are much different than the other groups because we're not building, most of the time we're not building on our own account. Right? We're causing construction to be built and participating through land aggregation and working with the property owners to aggregate that property in a slightly different way. And therefore we get to take advantage of flexibility that is not allowed generally within the context of other people's individual projects. We can switch our product based on the land that we can aggregate. And that's a different level of flexibility.
Yeah, I would say Mill Creek focuses a lot on assemblages. We've never entertained using eminent domain directly or asking a municipality to do it on our behalf. But therein kind of lies a problem when you're searching for pipeline. It is difficult to acquire very well located, 2 to 3 acres near a transit station, or 5 to 10 acres if you're doing a little bit more low density project to get scale. But Mill Creek's model is more of a subject to model where we're willing to pay well above an appraised price, even negotiating against myself even further. As long, but we don't put money out there until the approvals are fully in place. So hopefully that the financial offer is attractive enough to get people to come along on their own.
Steve, no municipality wants to use eminent domain, and we have a lot of reasons why. The Gyrodine case, the state wants to take $100 million.
You just can't do it.
So you don't think it's in the cards for Waltham?
It is in the cards.
It is.
They've already made a decision that
They've already designated this area a blighted area, and pursuant to New York state law, they can condemn pursuant to the fact that it's a blighted area. And if you drive by the corner of, Merrick Avenue and Grand Avenue, it is blighted. I don't know exactly what the criteria was or is, but it meets the criteria.
Good afternoon. My name is Ciris Barrios. I am a team member of CSPM Group, who runs the community engagement arm for Renaissance Downtowns and other developers. I'm interested actually in learning what kind of strategy you use to engage community in order to not get these Article 78s, to not get this pushback. So I'm interested in that because I think communities often want a seat at the table. We actually have 2 wonderful EDs of one of the Butterfly Effect Project, who has been a partner in Southampton, and SEPA Mujer stands for the Tourism Investment of Women. We had 300 people supporting the passage of 2,400 units. A mile away from that project, they had another 300 people opposing 54 units. And I think it comes down to the level of community engagement the developers are willing to welcome to the table. So I'm wondering what kind of strategy you're using in your project.
First and foremost, one of the things that Mill Creek looks at is, where has the community laid out a plan for density and development long before we even came to the market. So, in the case of Mineola, for example, they identified a specific downtown development district that was clearly laid out, and developers had to work within that framework to identify parcels that kind of fit their vision of density. So that's one way to avoid some significant community opposition when the plans have already had substantial community input to begin with. Another thing that we've done is, for example, our most recent project in Mineola on Searing Avenue that I alluded to at the outset of the meeting here, is that there was a local community, Corpus Christi church, that was in financial dire straits, and we were able to kind of identify some surplus property that they had to create a win-win transaction where residential development would happen on their surplus property, workforce housing was incorporated, and monies for the land acquisition itself were be able to put into church coffers to keep them on financial footing. So there are always ways that we try to work with communities and the actual sellers themselves to create those great partnerships. And also we just tailor the designs of all of our communities to match the form that they want to see in their communities.
I was just going to say to Sean, because in Aspen Village, I think
One of the strategies that Renaissance does is they go to the property owners and say, listen, do you want to buy in? So it's not like you're excluding those property owners from partnering with you in
No, that is a key piece to our approach to everywhere. So this is in whether it's New Rochelle or Hempstead or Huntington Station or Southampton and Riverside. Our process gives all of the development rights to every property owner within the downtown, and then it encourages the property owners to aggregate and work together. But there's no race to go down to the clerk and sign up, right? You can use this now, you can use this in 20 years. This is zoning, and so it allows people to be comfortable in family planning, in business planning, and estate planning for when they are ready to participate in the growth in the economic.
We're a bit of an anomaly.
So we buy very large, and we hold over time. We've been here for 40 years in Suffolk County. And so hopefully the experience that we've had within the community over 40 years proves to them that we've done the right thing by the community, hiring, making sure that the people in our community are hired first and foremost. When new companies come in, at least from the business standpoint, we're building on industrial buildings and offices. And then, look, the Article 78 that we have against us is a school board. 15 years ago when we started, 10 years ago when we started, up until 6 months ago, the school board has been on our side. We've always had an open door and a great policy with our school board. The taxes that we generate, remember, 70% go right to the school. When we're finished, $35 million every year will go to the school. So you look and you say, well, this is the group that's suing us, and yet we've had an open door policy. We try to communicate as best as we possibly can to what is going to happen. We do that not only because of Heartland Town Square, but we do that with anybody in our community can walk in. We are not a hierarchical company. You want to speak to me, you want to speak to my father, even guys, if we are free. Sometimes we do say no because we're not free at that particular time. But you can always come to us and talk to us about any issue, about any problem. You might not like the answer within the community. You might not like hearing what we have to say, but it will come from a place of honesty and hopefully the integrity that we put within. We love our community. Politicians come and go. We'll be there. My family will be there.
Just real quick, and this is a plug.
They believe we're going to have more school children than we said. We have economic studies saying that we're going to have X number of school children. They're saying that we're going to have X times. They use a study that is absolutely ridiculous. They did the numbers absolutely wrong. So let's just say there's disagreement on that.
And real quick, just a plug for Vision Long Island and organizations like it. I think the days are long gone of where developments are being shoved down the throats of communities. It really is more of a bottom-up planning these days. I can only think of one particular development on Long Island right now that's being shoved down the throats of the community, and that's in Belmont. The Belmont Park, the state had an RFP for, I think, four and a half years. They had some great plans. They decided to ditch all those plans, and because Governor Cuomo is beholden to the Dolans, they teed up the next RFP to build a hockey arena at Belmont, which is a lock, and the fix is in on that. So there's no mystery as to what's happening there. But the community, for the most part, is against it, and the state doesn't care. So that's what happens when you have a regional or a state approach to bringing things into a community. It usually meets with a lot of resistance and doesn't go well, correct?
Talk about Belmont because we were one of the original proposers to the RFP that just got canceled, and they just did a new RFP. So I don't know if you remember, 4 years ago there was an RFP for Belmont, and the Cosmos. Remember the Cosmos soccer team? They were originally going to be the favorite to get that. And getting back to your question on community outreach, we did a tremendous amount of community outreach and went house to house in that community, and we found out that nobody in that community wanted the Cosmos. Right? No one wanted to have a major soccer stadium, 25,000 square feet, in the middle of a residential community, although on one side it was next to the Cross Island Parkway, but it really was in the middle of a residential community. So we made a proposal. We went to the town of Hempstead, had done a study to see what the members of the community wanted. We provided a development plan which met exactly what the town residents wanted, because it's town of Hempstead, right? Even though it's owned by NYRA, it was town of Hempstead property, located in the town. And we thought we were going to win that RFP, and then the RFP was canceled. And then, as David says, the RFP was canceled because I guess the Islanders, and I don't know the real reason, because I'll never know the reason, but it seems like the Islanders now made a proposal and they want to go to Belmont Racetrack. Me personally, we didn't respond to the new RFP, our company, because we don't think we're going to get it now. But I will tell you, the Islanders had a great location as far as I'm concerned, Nassau Coliseum. If you lived in Suffolk, you can get to the Nassau Coliseum. If you lived in Nassau, you can get to the Nassau Coliseum. But if you put the Nassau Coliseum, on the Queens border, it's very difficult for someone to get there from Suffolk County. And a lot of the Islander fans, I was an Islander fan when I was a kid. My father had season tickets. A lot of the fans come from Suffolk County. It's going to be very difficult for a lot of those people, if it is located in that location, to get there.
And just a quick point of information, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the reason I mentioned the Dolans is because Newsday's been pushing the agenda for the arena at the Islander Arena at Belmont, and James Dolan, who's Pat Dolan owns Newsday, his brother James Dolan is going to be building the arena along with the Wilpons. So he's going to have a wedge between Barclays and the Coliseum, and he's going to have a lot of events coming to that arena and try to starve out the Coliseum and Barclays, much to the chagrin of those people. But the fix is basically, and if you take a look, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but you're free to go on the websites, the campaign contributions, and see how much Cablevision and the Dolan family has given Governor Cuomo in the last 5 years, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Any other questions? Lee?
Sean, you mentioned form-based zoning for Riverside. Are you indicating, is that meaning that it's form-based and not use-based, and you're looking at general densities, but there'll be some flexibility in terms of the market dictating what the best use for those properties are? And then extending over to David's project, is some of that taking place with Heartland, and are we seeing it anywhere else?
Yeah, so all of our developments put in place a form-based overlay district, so we leave all the underlying zoning alone, because we don't want to take away what people have bought their properties under, right? They had an expectation when they bought under light industrial or commercial office or village business, right? So we institute a form-based overlay zone that dictates the form. It gives you a three-dimensional box in which you're allowed to build. It pretty much eliminates all side, rear, and front yard setbacks. It regulates the size of the public realm, so it tells you exactly where your building should be from the face of the existing curb. And there's a lot of engineering and thought that goes into understanding the current built environment. Riverside and Hempstead and New Rochelle are three very different places. So in order to put the right regulations in place, we have to do a tremendous amount of engineering understanding of all the different parts, the spider web of information that goes into making those decisions. But then anyone can do virtually anything on any floor of any building anywhere in that area. And what we've done is we came up with a really interesting way to use seeker to entitle all of that as of right. And we were actually able to entitle that flexibility in an as of right environment. New Rochelle was 12 million square feet, over 400 acres, and 6,500 residential units across 3 different school districts and school district boundary lines. And by doing seeker a little bit differently or significantly differently than most people use it, we're able to make all of that as of right. So therefore, any jewelry store owner or anybody who owns an old office building or anyone who owns a bodega can go ahead and use that zoning however they want to. But it regulates the buildings so they're normalized across the public realm. And the sidewalks, and we regulate the storefronts, for instance. We tell you must have a storefront in your building. The glass must be from 3 foot to 7 feet. It must be clear. You must have active doorways every 60 feet or 120 feet within the building, depending on where you are. However, it is not regulated to be retail. It could be your lobby office. It could be the gym. It could be a community services center. It could be light industrial. So all of those things are flexible within there to make sure that over time the market dictates what gets built, and the community doesn't suffer with bad architecture planning, and it doesn't have to lose the walkability that was the nature of this mass entitlement to begin with.
So if you had the underlying zoning before, you'll always be in the old that was there, but you actually might get new. You might have the ability to add it to
In Riverside, you went from a one-story industrial with a footprint that was probably 18% of the total footprint of the site that you could actually build on, to 4.5 stories with no setbacks. Right? So there is no density calculation. So you have 2,200 units. You can fit all 400 square foot studios, as much as your three-dimensional box can hold, and as much as you can park. That is what you fit on your site. And that's, again, flexibility within the market to allow the market to dictate what the market wants while being responsive and responsible to the community and the environment. Yes, or you could put your light industrial on the ground floor and multifamily above.
So the theme throughout this morning and this afternoon is talking about, my generation will say the millennials, and want to kind of stereotype it, but I think the balance for us, and I've asked this question before, is we're putting a lot of this more rental supply in the market, which is great. But as developers, how do you suggest finding the balance where giving the opportunity for folks to stay on the island to rent, but at the same time also put that money aside for future down payment on a house? And that seems to be a challenge where a lot of people end up being perpetual renters because they have no other recourse, or they're staying at home longer. So do you figure that out into your planning about kind of a cycle of a turnover for renters that eventually become homeowners down the road? Just curious to see what your take is on that.
Happy to try to answer. There's really no answer to that because it's so expensive to live on Long Island, right? I mean, rents are very high. Even in a new community, rents are very high. I'll just give you a quick example. Like, we have something that we're going to do in Uniondale. Are you familiar with Holly Patterson, the Holly Patterson campus on Jerusalem Avenue in Uniondale? It's part of the National University Medical Center. Anyone familiar with that? So we won an RFP over there we asked them an RFP. We got 2 sites rezoned for the town board of the town of Hempstead, and one of them was for what we call millennial housing. So what we're trying to do, and we need a pilot to do it, is we're renting 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments. We have 190 units we're going to be building. And we're going to try something we think a little bit novel. We haven't finished how we're going to do it, but it's almost like a dormitory where we're going to be able to rent, since both bedrooms are the same size and they both have their own bathroom within the bedroom, and a shared living room. We're going to try to rent one side to one resident and one side to another resident. And we're looking at, right, $1,100 per side. So, we think that gives, it's all about price, so that you can save money. That's really the answer to your question. I mean, how do you price the apartments in a certain way so you can save money? And so we think, hopefully, we're going to give people the opportunity to get out of their parents' basements, and at the same time, we'll make a little bit of money as developers, because that's what we do for a living. That's how we feed our families. But at the same time, we think we're going to be a very fair price. If someone paying $1,100 a month is not the same as someone making a commitment to a 2-bedroom apartment for $2,000 or $2,500 a month, which is, I'm sure anyone sitting at this table right now is not renting 2-bedroom apartments on Long Island for $2,500 a month, right? So that's, we'll be at maybe $2,200, $2,300 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment.
One thing that we're finding at New Village is a lot of the residents who leave our apartments are actually moving into other types of housing in the village. So right down the road from us is the Riverwalk development, so those are townhouses. A significant number of people who leave do move into Riverwalk, and then other people are buying single-family homes in the neighborhood. So we're seeing that just having, they're able to leave our project. I don't know, it's not, I think it's by design. I think sort of everybody keeps referring to the market, but I think that happens once you get into that cycle.
So the current problem with the state of single-family homes on Long Island is that the ones that you can afford are in areas you don't want to live in. But in Riverside, for instance, you can buy a single-family home for $80,000. Sorry, you can buy a nice little cottage, partial water view for $240,000, and live in the Riverhead School District. The areas that have really expensive single-family homes are going to be in areas where the school districts are perceived to be significantly better. And obviously next to larger employment bases or transportation. One of the things I would suggest as a renter is that we all get over the misperception of affordable housing. I think virtually every college student graduating in their senior year should be putting themselves on a list to get into affordable housing and workforce housing rentals on Long Island, because virtually all of them will be making a salary that would allow them to enter into that market. Now, we don't have near the supply to actually accommodate the people that need it. But like in Riverside, we volunteered to force the market to build half of those units to workforce housing standards, and you cannot tell the difference in the architecture between one building and the other. We're trying, it's our responsibility to help you get over that misperception of the affordable housing, but the fact of the matter is there's really good rental housing at $950 a month for a studio, up to $1,450 a month for a 2-bedroom. In Riverhead with water views, going to be in Riverside. They're being built all over Long Island. And we need our young people who are struggling in that sense to actually get over their misperceptions, go visit some of these communities. Conifer, Georgica Green, they're building great projects throughout Long Island, and there's a number of other ones that I highly encourage people to research and get into.
And realizing all that, you know, we come at it from a design perspective, knowing that most young renters are going to have to live together. So we know that we have to provide an area that might have to accommodate that second person or third person, whatever the numbers might be. So from a design perspective, we understand that, you know, for the market rate apartments.
And, you know, one other point I may just throw in there, you know, once this tax bill passes, the values of houses on Long Island will likely drop 15 to 20%. So there you go. You may be able to get in, you know, once the inventory rises and the prices go down even further, you may be able to get in. Any other questions that we?
No, you know, I'm okay.
Okay, go ahead, shout it out.
Yeah, I'm taking a look from the government perspective. I was the administrator of Westbury for a while, and while there we did use eminent domain. I then formed a company called Farmingdale, I'm in Mineola now, and Hempstead. So from the perspective of the developer, what are, if you could say this simply, what's the best thing that local government has done or does, and what gets in the way? What do they need to change, if they can?
Come on, Sean again?
My personal experience is the best thing government can do is trust in their partnership with private industry. The private industry world of real estate development can offer tremendous amounts of insights into how to better run government facilities, recycling programs, outreach programs, in order to make sure that you're getting the input to run the government better, while we're spending private money in a way that those governments don't usually have funding to do. Now, the understanding between a developer and a municipality in the facts around real estate development, around school children and schools, the impact to schools, the taxes, the impacts to pilots, revisions to uniform tax exemption policies for all IDAs to encourage significant growth within larger areas, not just individual projects. Those types of very sophisticated tools that are being used throughout the country, except here on Long Island and mostly in New York, are things that government can bring to the table in partnership with private industry. So that's something I would strongly encourage. And we've seen where that has happened, significant growth, economic growth, as well as social equity has been included in all of these areas. And Patchogue is a great, again, always a shining example of one of the forward leaders of that opportunity. And you know, so it's hard for local governments and elected officials to make major statements about pilots and school districts and density and development and traffic and everything that we deal with on a daily basis. But my encouragement would be open and trust and partnership with local development.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that. I think the greatest thing a municipality can do is simply offer predictability to the development community, and that comes in terms of zoning approvals, site plan approvals, IDA pilot schedules, all of that information that can truncate, say, a 2-year approval period down to 6 to 12 months. That would go an incredibly long way towards developers having the ability to put together the right assemblages to create the development in the first place. If I have to ask a property owner to hold their property off the market for 2, potentially 3 years while I cobble together additional pieces, it just puts too much pressure on those sellers who may need to make near-term financial decisions. But if that process is 6 to 12 months, New Rochelle is a great example of places that have done that one-stop shopping for much shorter approval periods. I can unlock a lot more land assemblages because sellers only have to think 6 to 12 months out and not potentially 2 or 3 years.
Just so you know, with New Rochelle, I mentioned it's automatic as of right development approvals, 90-day site plan approval with an already prescribed, transparent, automatically applied pilot based on a uniform tax exemption policy revision that carved out the overlay district that we put into place. There are 9 different developments under construction right now, and the place is booming because exactly right. The transparency of the process, a group like Mill Creek, Avalon Bay, RXR, anybody can go in there and see exactly what they're going to get before they spend a single dollar, and they can measure the risk and invest quickly.
The village of Farmingdale here on Long Island did the same thing. What they did was they said, listen, you could come right? You could come all together and get all your approvals together here. You don't have to meet with this board and that board and that board, and you can see what's happening in Farmingdale today. So, usually I get a lot of complaints in my job from developers, and because I'm on both sides of the fence. When I'm talking about development, we get comments from the community and stuff like that. Most of the thing here on Long Island is that it's the tail wagging the dog. Usually when a company or a developer or a business comes to a community anywhere else in the country, they roll out the red carpet, they fly them in a helicopter, they have a parade, the high school band is out there. You're going to invest $150 million in our community and bring jobs and bring and it's like, oh, what can we do for you? Here, it's like this.
What are you going to do for me?
All right, so let's say goodbye.
Say goodbye, Steve.
I just want to say I have to leave. Thank you for listening, and I hope we gave you some insight into some of the things that Ingrid Berman's doing. Okay, so thank you for having me.
Okay, any other questions? Come on, one more question. That's it? All done? Last call? All right, thanks very much for coming. Wait, one more. Gary.
How do you work out the parking with blended use?
First, we start by drastically reducing the typical requirements. So it goes down to usually 1 car per unit on residential, 2.5 cars and 3 cars per unit on commercial and retail. We then institute a very sophisticated sharing analysis to allow people to take any use, whether it's hospitality, restaurant, retail, office, seniors, whatever. You can cross all of those uses and come up with an output of sharing ratios that allows you to further reduce those parking requirements by use of sharing. Then we add in further reductions based on having on-site car ride sharing, bring zip cars in. You can then reduce the parking requirements again by having on-site valet or mechanical parking. So we put together a very long list of sophisticated ways that are proven technologies or systems to allow you to reduce the amount of parking to reduce that burden on the building.
I just want to thank Vision Long Island for having this great panel. Let's have a hand for them.